Well, to wrap things up, earlier we were talking about extremists and activists, and, I had my first experience when I was in college. I majored in agricultural journalism at the University of Missouri, and as part of that program, the best part is that as part of the journalism school, you go and you work for a local NBC affiliate. So you immediately go out and start reporting. Now, some of those reports are very humorous to watch because we're all newbies in the business and, the nerves. But I focused mine on agriculture. So even though ag wasn't my beat, I went ahead and did all ag stories. I decided to do a story on confined animal feeding operations. There was one being put in near Columbia, and it was raising quite a stink, no pun intended, to neighbors. And so there were all these negative stories on the radio, on TV, in the newspapers about why they did not want this confined animal feeding operation to come in. So there were so many negative stories, I decided, I'm going to do a positive story on the economics of one of these operations. How many people it employs and kind of what it brings to local communities. Well, in order to do that, I interviewed Chris Chin, who's now the Missouri Director of Agriculture, and I know is a friend of the Animal Ag Alliance. And I did a two-part series. And after the first part aired, we received a lot of negative emails. Some were personally attacking me, some personally attacking Chris, but a lot that you could tell this was definitely an emotional topic. Also saying it was biased reporting, it was one-sided. When I look back, was it pretty one-sided? Yeah. But in my defense, there were so many on the other side that had been produced and aired that I was going to tell the other side. So the next, I called Chris and I said, we are getting a lot of negative emails just to warn you that you may be getting the same. Well, so she called her friends at the Missouri Department of Agriculture, Missouri Farm Bureau, and said, hey, we need to have our voice heard too. So then there started a flood of emails coming in thanking me for my reporting. So then the next day, the next story aired, and my news director called me into his office and said, Tyne, if there's one thing that I've learned is this is definitely an emotional topic and it sparked a lot of controversy, but there's too many people writing in that this is a positive story. And that tells me that maybe this story was too positive. Didn't even mention the negative side of it, but mentioned that maybe my story sparked too many positives, and so maybe the story ended up being too positive. Well, it didn't end there. Luckily, I still got an A in the class. That's what I was kind of worried about at the time, also agriculture, but worried about my grade at the university. But a couple days later, my roommates called me and said, Tyne, you may want to come when you get home, just warning you that a copy of the Columbia Tribune's here, and there's an article about you that's not very positive. So I go home and I read it, and I'm 21 years old at that time. I knew what I was going to do. I wasn't going into local TV. I realized that wasn't what I wanted to do. But I went home and read that article, and I cried. I cried and I cried, and I called my dad, and I was like, these people are personally attacking me. What do I do? And I quickly realized at that moment that maybe I was too passionate about agriculture to report on local TV. I didn't want to report on car accidents or murders or a house fire. That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to tell the story of agriculture. And in order to do that, maybe I was too close to agriculture in order to report for local TV. So I got out of TV for about 5 years, went to a really positive, that everybody thinks is really positive. I went and worked for Monsanto for 5 years. Which I realized that story and the experience I had with Sierra Club that personally attacked me really prepared me for the world I was about to get into at Monsanto. And then, lo and behold, I got back into broadcast journalism after 5 years and now absolutely love what I do. But that was my first experience, and I realized that it didn't matter how old I was. It didn't matter that I was trying to actually tell something positive. They didn't care. They just used Chris and me as an example and used us as the ones that they wanted to prop up on a pedestal for everyone to shoot at, and that's exactly what happened. But, in agriculture today, I know there's some challenges. When I talked to producers out there, and I'll get into this a little bit, but there's a lot of producers out there that are struggling with price. And you look at the grain side, you look at the livestock side. We don't grow when things are easy. We grow when we face challenges. And you look at the last 4 years, we've been facing plenty of challenges when it comes to price. And you look at the last decade, animal agriculture, the challenges that we've faced with it with extremists. But the issue that we have today when it comes, we've talked a lot about how efficient producers have been, right? We're able to produce more protein with less livestock. And that's really good when we talk about greenhouse gas emissions and our carbon footprint and all of that. That's a positive story to tell. But when it comes to price, not always so good, right? Our latest the cattle on feed report showed we were up 9%, placements up 7%. This cattle herd just continues to grow. Protein overload, hog expansion for the first quarter, down 1% from December, but we're still really high at 72.9 million. I mean, we have protein overload on our hands. Not a bad thing, but for price, that's really been struggling. At the same time, when you look at demand, exports have been excellent. When you look at 2017, red meat exports hit a record. Beef up 2% from the previous record, pork up 6% from the previous record. Demand continues to grow. And that's kind of what's helped, I think, our pork prices. And, I know we've had struggle with cattle prices, but with cattle, it seems like there's been kind of this balance that, yes, we're producing a lot more, but exports have been able to hold their own and even increase, and domestic demand has increased as well. When you look at pork, we talked a lot about bacon. Bacon is sexy again. I mean, you go order a Bloody Mary, and it's like full of bacon and all of this other stuff. I mean, they use it everywhere right now. And that's helping to chew through some of this added protein that we have on the market. At the same time, it's a different situation in dairy. Unfortunately, a couple months ago, I went down and visited with an individual by the name of Joe Kelsey, a dairy producer in Indiana, who was one of about 100, it looks like the number's 100, to lose a contract with Dean Foods. They got a notice of 90 days that Dean's would no longer be able to take their milk. And in the letter, I read the letter, there were two reasons. One was a new milk processing plant coming online in Indiana, and it's Walmart. And so there was some negative press about Walmart, about Dean's for dropping these dairy contracts. And then the other one was, the other reason that Dean's put in the letter was milk consumption. From 1975 to 2018, milk consumption has dropped 11 gallons per person. And I look at my own household. I mean, the only one really that drinks milk, a lot of milk, we'll eat it on cereal, or we'll have it cereal and things like that. But as far as actually drinking fluid milk, my two daughters. And so we go through a couple gallons a week, but, it's like we're kind of one of those households that we have decreased our milk consumption. But at the same time, production has gone up 350 million gallons per year. So we kind of have this imbalance right now. Undersecretary Ted McKinney described it yesterday as dairy farmers, they're hemorrhaging right now. And, talking to these producers, unfortunately, that's exactly what's going on. When I talk to analysts and I say, what's it going to take to change this? Well, they say demand can increase, and thankfully we've seen some increase in demand. Just like bacon, butter, sexy again. Everyone wants to use butter again, and some of these other products. Cheese consumption has increased thanks to pizza consumption and all of that. But as far as fluid milk goes, we're just not drinking as much fluid milk. And so he says what's going to have to happen, really, if we don't see exports grow substantially, is we're going to have to see fewer dairy cows and fewer production. And unfortunately, that's going to mean maybe some dairy producers exiting the business. We've already seen that happen, whether it be from Dean Foods, that one of these dairy producers may not find a contract. They have until the end of this month. But when I talked to Joe Kelsey, he said, realistically, Tyne, if I don't have a contract by early May, so now, I've got to cancel the feed trucks that are coming and all of this. I've got to cancel that in advance. And so it's not like tomorrow I can just shut off production. And that's kind of the obstacle that they're facing right now. So producer sentiments, we've kind of seen an uptick, and you see kind of after 16 that huge incline in producer sentiments. This is the CME Ag Economy Barometer that Purdue puts out with CME each month. And that was after the election. So producer sentiments went up, and then we've kind of been higher, but really on this roller coaster ride. Well, in the past 2 months, producer sentiments have dropped 15 points. 15 points in the past 2 months, and that's largely because of trade concerns. Trump has made very clear, the president has made very clear that NAFTA, he threatened to withdraw. It's like every week we heard a different message. But in D.C. this week, doing a lot of my interviews, it sounds like there will possibly be a deal by the end of May. The question is, will dairy be included in that with Class 7 and the issues that we have with Canada? A lot of the insight that I received this week is they do think that Trump has said that dairy is a priority. Well, now Ambassador Lighthizer has signed on that dairy is a priority, and they actually think that we will see a dairy deal included in NAFTA 2.0, but it will probably be the last minute. It'll be after auto and all of those other big issues happen, and it would be a last-minute deal. But we know Canada's not going to go easy on this, and they're going to stand their ground when it comes to Class 7. But they're hopeful that we will have a deal by May. And that's not only because we have Mexican elections coming up, where their presidential elections, the front runner is not a fan of NAFTA. He kind of takes more of a Trump stance on trade. And so that could be possibly hold things up if we don't see a deal. The other thing is we need to get Congress to sign off on it. And a lot of the folks I talked to said the end of May is really the time that needs to happen. But you look at NAFTA, I have sometimes viewers write in and say, why are you covering trade so much? I don't understand why all we hear about is trade. Well, look at the numbers. U.S. ag exports quadrupled to Canada and Mexico, $8.9 billion in 93 to $38.6 billion in 2015. I just saw new numbers this morning that U.S. pork exports so far this year, our pork exports, 40% are going to NAFTA. 11% South Korea, 16% Japan, but 17% to Hong Kong. And you look at Hong Kong, you look at South Korea, you look at NAFTA, you look at Japan, look at all these deals that are possibly trying to go on. And then we have this trade war fears with China. Really, that's the rhetoric. We have the Trump administration actually just wrapping up their trip to China this week. I actually had an interview at the White House with Ray Starling, the special assistant to the president for trade or for agriculture and agricultural trade. And the reason I asked Secretary McKinney yesterday that question about is agriculture setting the bar too low when it comes to this do no harm mantra when it comes to trade, that's because Ray made that very clear at our interview. He said, I understand the anxiety among producers right now. When you look at someone like China, they can be a big buyer. You see it, the potential. We just heard about that, the growth. We can see some major exports to China. But at the same time, it's not fair right now. And you look at soybeans that possibly have the most to lose. He said that actually China has increased their buys of soybeans overall, but our market share within China continues to decline. And so he thinks really with this deal that while Dewey's have a lot to lose, yes, and while there could be some turbulence in the meantime, he understands that could happen. He thinks that if we can get China on a level playing field, that we have the opportunity for a lot of our exports. He mentioned poultry, for example. He goes, Tyne, you tell me why the poultry and the chicken that we eat here in the U.S., why they won't eat it in China. They claim because of avian influenza. Seriously, still? We brought a case against it. They backed away, but they continue to not buy U.S. poultry. And I think we can make major headway with that. Farm bill right now, not sure what's going to happen with a farm bill, but in my talks this week, it's really the House versus the Senate right now. We've seen the House's version, very partisan vote. I have never seen Congressman Peterson so upset, and it's really over SNAP. And they say SNAP could really be the roadblock. And now the question is, once we see the Senate come out with their version of the farm bill, which should be in the next couple weeks, once they get into committee and really conference and look at what are we going to do to combine the House version and the Senate version, the question is really what happens to SNAP, because there's very big concerns about if the House's proposal would be included in that final one and how much the Senate's willing to budge. And so really the talk at the beginning was about funding with Farm Bill and if we can get a Farm Bill done. Well, now really it's about SNAP. And is the GOP willing to budge? Are they willing to budge and how much? And really the timeline. And that possibly if we do see a 2018 Farm Bill, it won't be until the very end of the year. Whereas I talked to a couple other folks this week that said realistically, if we don't have a Farm Bill by July, we won't see a Farm Bill this year. When I go out, I talk to producers in the countryside, and then we talk about these lower prices. We talk about this frustration. The biggest thing I'm hearing, and the most successful producers, are the ones that think outside the box. So you see that hay picture up there. I was in Idaho earlier this year and met a potato producer who apparently we've gotten too good at growing potatoes. Who knew? We've grown like this perfect potato and prices have declined, and these producers in Idaho are losing money hand over foot because they can't make money with their staple crop anymore. Well, this individual was at a meeting, met a guy from China, developed a relationship, and made an agreement to start shipping hay from Pocatello, Idaho to China. It takes 45 days for that hay to get compressed, get in a ship, get in a container, head over to China. 45 days. They put in a hay press and everything. That one decision, that one relationship, that one handshake has created a hay demand boom in Idaho. And now all of these producers are able to switch over production, grow more hay, and it's impacting the local communities, it's impacting the equipment dealers, all because this one producer thought outside the box, made a relationship with a guy in China, and is now shipping hay over there. Or at the bottom there, I interviewed a individual from Michigan, a pork producer, who actually now supplies pigs to the cold water pork processing plant, which if you've been to that pork processing plant, you know how amazing it is. Their goal is to process about 10,000 head a day for the first year, so now. But in 3 to 5 years, they say they have to build one more building, and they'll be able to process 22,000 pigs a day. A day. And really, it's bacon and then that demand that's driving the demand, and Hatfield Pork is the brand. They're trying to bring that more to the Midwest. Well, a guy named Brad decided, I'm tired of riding the wave of the commodity markets with pork. I'm not making any money in this. He sold off all of his head, contracted with an individual in Iowa, and he gets paid on a per head basis, no matter what the price is for pigs today. He gets paid on a per head basis and is making great money and thinks he can pay off these 5 new barns in about 2 years. Based on what he's making. And the reason, he's only 15 minutes from this new cold water pork processing plant. So no longer is he worried about riding the waves of the market. Today he's focused on row crops and his family and other things, and knows that this is a great income source for him, thinking outside the box, right? Or this individual in Texas I met who realized the best asset he has as a grain producer is the grain out back in his bin. Teamed up with a market analyst, a broker, and was able to make an extra 6 figures last year just by working the market and thinking like a trader. An extra 6 figures. Realizing that hot commodity that everybody's trading is in his backyard and he has an advantage. I went to a meeting with young producers, and there was an individual speaking who was about 80 years old, Dr. Bolgi from Purdue University, and I asked him, I said, what is the biggest mistake you see young producers make? The biggest mistake. He said, oh, that's easy, Tyne. They think they have to do everything on the farm like their dad or their granddaddy did. I hate to tell you, but it's not your dad or your granddaddy's business anymore. It's changed. It's evolved. And if you think like that, you're not going to be profitable, because you have to change and think outside the box too. And that's hard for some of the older generations on the farm to let some of those young producers come on and really make some of those decisions. But that's what it's going to take. So the secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. And really in agriculture, that's what we need to do. We have to be forward thinking. Look at really how can we get ahead of some of these items. And these conversations today have done a great job of doing that. But let's quit focusing on fighting the old, but building the new. So do I know if pork prices are going to be extremely profitable this year? I have no idea. Do I know if dairy producers may get some relief and we'll see dairy prices on the incline, and some of these producers that are thinking they're going to have to sell out actually get to recover? I don't know. But what I do know is agriculture is the king and the queen of change. Charles Darwin once said, one of my favorite quotes, it's not the strongest of species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It's the ones most adaptable to change. Now, I'm telling you, I don't agree with Charles Darwin on everything, but that quote really describes agriculture. You don't have to be the strongest in the business. You don't have to be the biggest in the business. You just have to be adaptable to change and improve your bottom line. And even if it's maybe you were a conventional producer that you see you can make an extra few dollars on organic, something like that, then that's what you have to do to really improve your bottom line and be there for the future. So I don't know what 2018 holds, but I'm in meetings like this and conversations like this, and I feel like the tone's changing. It's more hopeful. We're no longer kind of the victims of this. We're going to take a head-on approach and really get ahead of some of this and really change the rhetoric around animal agriculture and all of agriculture today. You have scientists up here, dietitians up here, who are giving you these great facts and this great information and these great tools to get out in front of some of this. And if someone comes after you and you know, kind of trying to come after your operation with words, well, you have the facts and the figures to back it up on why we are some of the best and some of the most profitable producers and efficient producers in the world. And so that's why I'm bullish on agriculture. So thank you again for letting me be your 2018 MC for the Animal Ag Alliance Summit, one of my favorite events to attend every year just because of all the information that we're not only able to glean, but take home and use. Some really nice information. So thank you to all the speakers. Thank you to all of you for being such a great crowd. And with that, I'll turn it over for our closing comments. Terry Werkamp is Director of Live Production at Cooper Farms. He manages the team caring for the company's turkeys, hogs, and chickens, and its feed production. Terry has served on the Alliance board since 2014 and is currently serving as the board chairperson. So with that, let's welcome Terry to the stage.
Thank you, and thank you all for joining us for the 2018 Stakeholders Summit, Protect Your Roots. I hope you found everything energizing and inspiring, and you have a lot of ideas to take back home and take action on them. It's really up to us individually to do what we can to protect this industry and that we are all very proud of, and ensure that we can continue on for years and years. Our summit moderator, Tyne Morgan, did an excellent job leading us over the last 2 days, and I just want to show our appreciation with a round of applause. Also, not ever seeking recognition is our small but mighty staff at the Alliance. Kay and her team have done a wonderful job of another summit. They're already planning next year, so let's give them a round of applause. So later on this afternoon, you will all receive an email with a link to a survey. We would really like for you to take some time, fill that out, complete it, so that we can continue to make these summits better and better all the time. And please make plans to join us for the 2019 Stakeholder Summit. It's going to be May 8th and 9th at the Intercontinental in the plaza in Kansas City, and we look forward to seeing everybody there. Thank you again for coming.